Okay, welcome to the informational session for Group 4, Creative Writing. Now, it's just like it says, these genres are more creative in nature. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be Ernest Hemingway to be able to do this well, but what it does mean is that you take a more creative approach to the writing that you do in whatever you choose within this area. Again, as always, this is stuff that you have researched and created based on your research, not just things you have found. And whatever you have there needs to go forward to support your overall MGRP in an interesting way that's different than your other genres. The key here is to find an interesting way to work research into a creative work. One of the things, the misconception that people have is they're just like, oh yeah, I'm creative, and so I just do whatever. There's no research in creativity. Nothing could be further from the truth. You do a survey of fiction writers, creative writers around the world, and they will all tell you that they do extensive, overwhelming amounts of research in order to make their creative works realistic and interesting and well done. So, the same goes here. Now, when you choose one of these, again, it needs to be genre specific. You need to pay attention to the format. You know, don't write poetry if you hate writing poetry and you're terrible at writing poetry and you can't make anything rhyme and you don't know what to do about writing a poem. Then it probably wouldn't be the best thing to write like a 4-line poem that really isn't very poetic at all. So, choose one that works for you, but poetry can be interesting. Most of them are pretty straightforward. Ones that people sort of, I think, misuse sometimes is the diary/journal one. Sometimes those work very well, but if you do the diary/journal, a couple things to think about. One, it needs to look like a diary or a journal. It needs to have dates. It needs to have multiple entries. It needs to, it doesn't necessarily have to be handwritten, but it needs to look like something that a real person did, not just a Times New Roman Word document. Not too many people sit down with Word and just do a one-entry diary. So, the more authenticity, the better. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Actually, for this one, we have examples. First of a poem here. This poem is for an MGRP on baking, the cultural importance of baking around the world. And what this student did was found information about baking and its influence on culture and worked it into a poem. Go to the Works Cited page, you can see the different sources where this stuff came from. But let's listen to the first stanza here because it might not be so easy to read. Who knew so much of a society's culture could come from a pastry dish? Throughout history, baking has been used to tell a story. From the speculas of the Hollanders to the spritz of the Swedish, cookies have been used to pass news, legends, and inquiries. The baked goods we know so well in America have many European ancestors. Our gingerbread from the German Lebkuchen, their marzipan to our sugar. All of these dishes coming from molds of fruit, animals, and people, all wooden. And it goes on, and it's interesting. It uses sort of poetic sound, and it's research based to help give this information about where things come from and stuff like that. Our next example here is one that people do often, which is the children's book. For a children's book, this is another one that you need to pay careful attention to. It needs to work. It needs to be written for children. It needs to have a story. It needs to look good like children's books do. It doesn't need to just be clip art of stick figures with a really simple storyline that doesn't have any kind of interest or anything. So this is an MGRP on parental style, psychology stuff, the impact of parenting style. And so, you have sort of a doctor name there. And so as you go forward, you can see, various pages. There we go, simple booklet. Well, we're cutting this one short because we're about out of time anyway, but it's a good book. If you do one, make sure it looks right and works right. Good luck.